So, last business track session of the day, and the honor falls to Dan Coleman, an e-commerce marketing consultant at Coleman Marketing, an agency that's been working with leading brands in the UK and beyond. Dan's been helping those brands of all shapes and sizes make more money online since 1998. So, I think we've had some experienced people out here today, but I think Dan's probably going to take the crown. He's a Chartered Institute of Marketing MCIM graded member, a fellow member of the Institute of Direct Marketing, and perhaps, maybe, he's some sort of wizard. You'll get it in a minute. Covering SEO as our final topic today, please give Dan a big round of applause.
Hello. Feeling the love for Magento community today at this event. So let's finish with a love story, right? Magento and Googliette are the kind of the characters in this story. Now, these two, when they first met, absolutely made for each other, right? They knew that they were going to kind of live long and happy lives together. They were going to have loads of children. They were going to sell loads of merchandise. They were going to maximize their revenue per user from the organic search channel. But for those of you that are familiar with the source material, obviously referring to Romeo and Juliet, it's not a love story at all. It's actually a tragedy. Now, you've got these two characters, right? They come from these warring, feuding families, and they want to be together, but kind of, all of these external influences prevent them from being able to do that. So they come up with a plan. They listen to some external advice, and unfortunately, everyone ends up dead in a crypt. Now, if we think about kind of SEO in our kind of e-commerce sites, it's kind of an apt metaphor for what a lot of us are doing, right? If we get the bad advice, then we're stuffed. So what I'm going to try and do for the next 20 minutes is just give you some tips on how you can make sure that Google and Bing and other search engines by extension really love your Magento website. And the stuff that you can do before you even have to hire someone like me. So this is stuff, actionable tips. You can go back to the office tomorrow and start generating more SEO love so that you end up spending more time kind of up here, like getting it on the balcony. But in real terms, what does this look like? Because this is all a bit kind of metaphorical, right? So screenshot from a business that I spoke to last year. Now, they'd replatformed onto Magento, and it had gone very well. Of course it had, because Magento dev agencies are typically pretty good at what they do. But in doing so, these guys had kind of stretched their budget, and they knew that SEO was going to be important for them, but they weren't necessarily feeling that they could invest a large amount in SEO retainers right now, having just invested in getting onto, obviously, the right platform for their business. So what they did, I was introduced to them, and I kind of coached them for a few hours. And what I'm going to tell you really is an abridged version of what I told them. And ultimately, they to their credit, put in the work, and they did everything that I told them. And then over the course of a few months, they started to see their organic revenue creep up. So this stuff really does work. And I'm not saying everyone is going to see this drastic kind of incline, but hopefully some of you will. So what was the first thing that I told these guys? It was this. Now, before I go on, the SEO industry, and particularly online, if you listen to kind of SEO influencers and stuff like that, they will make out that SEO is really, really hard. So whatever we do, keep this in the room, right? That I've told you SEO is easy. Don't go getting onto Twitter and suggesting that Dan has said that SEO is easy. But honestly, SEO really, really is quite easy. All you have to do is learn to think like a search engine. Simple as that, right? Now, I know you're thinking, I've been told that even Google's engineers don't really understand how Google works anymore, which is true. But we're not really thinking about, I'm not trying to tell you how to kind of hack the algorithm and really kind of do some black hattery to really kind of give yourself an unfair advantage here. When I say learn to think like a search engine, you've got to think about what the job of a search engine is and what it's trying to do. And if you understand that, then you can actually make sure that you are playing things to your advantage a little bit. So if we roll back the clock a little bit to before Google was a thing, some of you probably aren't old enough to remember, but I certainly am. If you needed to buy something, let's say you needed to buy a hammer, you might go to your mate and you say, mate, I need to buy a hammer. Just to keep this on brand, I did actually ask ChatGPT how Shakespeare would have asked this question, and there it is. But however you ask it, your friend, your mate, your good sir in the tavern would respond with something along these lines. Now, obviously, in the modern age, what's happening is when we need to buy something, we are generally, we're going online and we're asking something like this, and the answer that we're getting is something like this. The day I was putting this deck together, this was the top organic search results for buy a hammer. Removed all of the ads and the local pack and stuff like that. So these are the kind of top 3 for organic. So if we take a closer look at them, guess what? They got loads of hammers. So have they. And what do we think about the third one? They got loads of hammers as well. So think like a search engine. How does Google know that when I'm asking where to buy a hammer, that these are the sites that have loads of hammers? So there's actually just 3 pieces of information, 3 questions that Google needs to ask about your website in order to know that it is potentially a good match for these queries. And here they are. So I'm just going to go through these in turn, right? Can I crawl it? Do I understand it? Is it any good? Tips I'm going to give are how to kind of take advantage of this sort of understanding. So let's start with, can I crawl it? Now, can I crawl it on an e-commerce website? E-commerce, it's a fairly mature industry, and so we know that for the most part, an e-commerce catalog is going to be structured something like this. Now, obviously, the beauty of open source is you can structure it differently, but broadly speaking, you will have your homepage, categories, maybe subcats, and then you have your products underneath them. Now, if most e-commerce websites are structured like that, then the search engines will expect most e-commerce websites to be structured like that, so they can find their way around it quite easily. So what that means is when you kind of translate that to how your URLs are structured, you have your domain, you have domain.com/category, category/subcat, and then you'll have your product slug. Now, I know we've got the option to have at the bottom here these long URLs as well. Now, there is a kind of an argument to say that actually that adds some additional context to the URL so that it gives you a better chance of being visible. But actually, from the point of view of maintenance, and if you need to retire products or you need to do a replatform or something like that, then the management of all of these additional URLs is actually, it can be quite a headache. The other challenge that you've got is that you will have your product on potentially like 50 different URLs. So your crawl budget is wasted by getting the search engine robots to essentially the same page through loads of different routes. So I'd say use the short version of the URL. But if any of you are on the long version, don't just go back to the office tomorrow and change this without speaking to your devs, because they will actually need to import a load of 301 redirects, right? So, but when you do actually make that change, it can actually pay some serious dividends. So that's the first tip for can I crawl it. Second one is to access your website from here. So you can all go back to the office tomorrow and you say, Dan says that I've got to go on a trip to New York for the benefits of SEO, right? Or you could just get a VPN and access your website from the US. Why do we do that? Because most crawl activity is still happening from the US. Now, they kind of distributed it a bit, but the vast majority is still from US data centers, US IP addresses. Now, what do you think happens if Google comes knocking on your website and you have used loads of GeoIP trickery to convert the currency to US dollars, you're localizing the language, you're dropping the U's from color and flavor and all of that kind of stuff. Or, even worse, you're actually redirecting from your UK storefront to a US site. What happens is the search engines actually will never see that you are a UK business targeting the UK. So really try and avoid doing any kind of GeoIP trickery. Use kind of softer techniques to get people kind of into your international storefronts if you have them. Yeah, I've seen many, many times this go wrong, and if you are perceived as a UK-based business that is targeting the US, which is what can happen, you're not going to rank in the US, you're not going to rank in the UK. Now, there is a whole load of extra stuff around crawl that we could talk about, but honestly, if you do these two things, then you're going to have won half the battle. So, moving on from that, do I understand it? If we go back to our product list pages, or our search results, sorry, we see that it's product list pages. Product list pages, product list pages. So what this tells us, right, is that product list page is pretty important for SEO. Let's have a look at the anatomy of a product list page. Excuse my terrible slide here, but you get the picture, right? This is kind of what the structure of a PLP typically is. You've got your top nav, you've got your category name, intro copy, then you've got your layered nav and your product grid. So the navigation, first of all, that's on every page on your website. And this is the first place that people can kind of go wrong, because what you need really is, this sends a strong signal to the search engines to what your site's about. Honestly, fashion businesses are some of the worst for kind of making mistakes with this, because what they'll do is they'll put in the top nav, instead of dresses, shirts, shoes, etc., actually spelling out what they sell. They'll have spring, summer 2024, get the look, new in sale, that kind of stuff, which doesn't really set that kind of topical authority up. So your real tip with the content piece is to kind of be literal, and that extends to the category name as well. If this is your dresses category, call it dresses. Now, I know that there's always this kind of trade-off with kind of your brand tone of voice and marketing copy and stuff like that. So that's what the intro copy's for, right? Go nuts with that. Apply all of the kind of the brand sort of tone of voice and stuff there that you like. But if you can, just season it with a bit of kind of some of these literal descriptors. Going to skip over the product grid, because really the only important thing there is the product title. Going to come back to that in a second. But before I do, I want to talk about the layered nav. Because really this is your secret weapon, it's your secret love potion when it comes to SEO. For my money, of all of the major platforms out there, Magento has the possibility to do this pretty much better than any of them. And so if you understand how to apply the right tricks to it, then it really can play to your advantage. So what are those tricks? Because out of the box, it's not quite there. So your standard kind of layered nav in Magento, when you kind of click on the filtering, so this is just it's the yoga t-shirts category that I've filtered on green cotton from the demo site, right? Now, what we see in that kind of the default for our URLs that it generates is we've got color equals 53 and a material equals 33. So that's green and cotton. But obviously, if you are kind of on the unfiltered version of that page and you see the links that are kind of going out to that filtered version, as the crawlers do, they're not really going to know what's on the end of that. And what we're actually looking to do with our PLPs is we're trying to say, you know what, we've not just got one page about yoga t-shirts. We love yoga t-shirts so much. You know, we've got green ones, orange ones, red ones, cotton ones, polyester ones, sleeveless ones, etc., etc. You're trying to create kind of a cluster that shows that we're really passionate about this product range. So what you can do, hopefully none of the devs in the room are going to be too upset with me saying this, but apparently there's very, very quick code change you can do, where rather than having your color equals 53, material equals 33, whatever it is, you can replace those with the actual names of those attributes. So color equals green, material equals cotton. That's already a big boost, right? You'll see that I've also I've changed the URL from yoga-new to yoga-t-shirts. You know, again, it's that theme is be literal. But there is a step further you can go. So at the bottom there, we see that I've recommended getting one of the extensions out there that actually converts the the URL parameters on the filtered URLs to paths. Now, a bunch of different extensions out there that do that. It's not my place to really say one is better than the other. Speak to devs about which one that you can use to get that result. But I would always recommend that's the route you go if you really want to make sure that your Magento PLPs are well optimized. So let's go back to the product titles. If we were to click into one of these products, and we end up on the Layla T, there's kind of a problem here. Now, what do you think happens if we search for the word tea? We're going to get something like that. We're going to get golf teas. We're going to get dictionary definition of the word tea. We're going to get a couple of organizations who have the acronym TEE. Not a single T-shirt on that page. Whereas if we search for T-shirts, we're going to see T-shirts, right? So when you're thinking about what are these literal descriptors that you're going to use for your SEO, just check them. See if Google already understands what these are. See if Bing already understands what terminology you're using. Don't try and train a search engine to use your language. Use the search engine's language, and you'll have a much easier time. Now, again, you can use all of the kind of the brand terminology, the marketing copy that you like in the product descriptions, explain what this will do, how it will make the customer feel, et cetera, et cetera. But if you can just season it with some literal descriptors, that's also really, really beneficial. So we've talked about can we crawl it? We've talked about do we understand it? Final thing is it any good? Now, quality is kind of a hotly debated topic among SEOs, and I'm not going to talk about kind of subjective quality. Is this article better than this article? But there's another measure of quality, which is it's the site hygiene. It's really showing the search engines that we really care about our website, right? I'm sure when I walked out here, you thought this is a guy who's going to have a Care Bear in his slide deck, right? So these are some signals you can use about whether you are caring about your e-commerce website. So first thing, probably a load of you think this first one is really obvious. We're always told, write unique product descriptions, write unique meta descriptions, write unique product titles. But how many of us really, when we are pushing to get a season launch live, we've got a big product drop, we've had a big shipment in, whatever it might be, we will just rush through this, we will just copy and paste, and we'll end up without writing actual unique descriptions and stuff like that. So put the effort into actually doing that. The next thing is, are the majority of products in our PLPs, are they actually available to buy? Now, what happens is if you've got a big catalogue, you'll have certain categories that aren't really of strategic importance to you, and they'll maybe be left to wither a little bit. And what happens is you go into those and you find that there's a lot of products on page one that's kind of, it's out of stock, you can't actually buy it anymore. Now, the search engines actually consider your domain, your site as a whole, as much as they consider whether an individual page is matching a particular query. So if you might have the best page in the world selling dresses, but if your category for shoes or jeans or whatever is just everything out of stock, then Google's going to think, well, do I really want to show this site? Because half the stuff on here you can't really buy. Will the customer have a better experience somewhere else? So again, it's about showing that we care about the site. Moving on from that, do we also care about our customers enough to have all of the standard e-commerce furniture? Stuff like product reviews. Are we putting our shipping policies clearly? Do we have size guides? All of this kind of stuff that really shows that we're serious about this being an e-commerce site to sell to the customers. Check whether it's loading quickly and neatly, particularly from the US. Now, I've covered this already, but just on this topic of it loading neatly, you see some websites when you actually launch them, particularly on mobile, after they've loaded on a slow connection, all of a sudden you'll see certain elements will jump about. Maybe there'll be an accordion that loads open and then closes up, whatever it might be. Try and avoid anything like that. And if you're seeing that kind of stuff happening, that's your kind of dipping your first toe into something called Core Web Vitals, and like cumulative layout shift, and these are things that are becoming more and more important in SEO. The experience on your site is really, really key. And then the final thing in here is, do we have relevant supporting content? Now, when we're talking about relevant supporting content, we're really kind of talking about what are we blogging about. But relevance is kind of an interesting one that a lot of people get wrong. See, we were told for years that content is king, but actually its context is more important. I remember I said that the search engines, they really consider your domain as a whole, your site as a whole, and what is it there to do. And they like your site to have a singular focus. They want you as an e-commerce site to be selling merchandise. So where this sometimes goes wrong, you might be, I don't know, if you're selling baking equipment and you've covered your blog with recipes, or you're selling electric guitars and you've got loads of articles about the greatest guitar solos ever. You might think these are good articles for our audience, and largely they are. But what it does is it dilutes Google's understanding of what you're trying to be. Are you trying to be a recipe site, or are you trying to sell flour? Are you like a guitarist blog that is competing with Metal Hammer and Loudwire and stuff like that, or are you actually trying to sell guitars? So you want to keep your content on this sort of, on the commercial focus. So the types of things that you want to be creating, spending your time on. Things like buyer's guide, product comparisons, video demos, in-depth reviews, why to buy, that kind of stuff. What products that you sell will allow you to get this type of effect. FAQs about your product categories, all of that kind of stuff. So I have just kind of gone over slightly. So let's quickly recap on how we can make sure that we're getting as much sort of Google love as possible for our Magento stores. So, number one, don't deviate from your standard e-commerce design patterns. Number two, take care of your site hygiene. 3, be literal with your titles and descriptions. 4, layered nav is a secret love potion, so use it liberally. Do check your site from the US. Don't waste time on irrelevant blogging. But most of all, try not to do this, and instead, try and do this. Hopefully this has been informative enough, and some of you will feel that you'll be able to go back to the office tomorrow and start writing your own SEO love story. But if anyone needs any kind of more tips and wants to speak to me about any of these topics, being an SEO guy, I've SEO'd myself, so just Google Coleman the Wizard and you will find me. Thank you very much for your time and enjoy the rest of your evening.